I'm a lawyer here in Denver, and as it says, I counsel small businesses and startups and do some complex commercial litigation, but all sorts of litigation. And there's going to be bankruptcy issues coming up, and we're happy to help with that as well. This is my going into the second year of Lyda law firm, and we are a small business law firm, small business like full service shop. So any needs you have there, we're happy to help. We're a certified B corporation, something that we're proud of. One thing we like to highlight is we have flat fee options and sort of a menu format on our website. Please check that out. And then lastly, we are currently offering free wills and advanced medical directives for the frontline workers. So if you know anyone that is in that boat, it's completely free. Please pass them along. I want to help out. Okay, so let's get to it. The title of this presentation is the SBA, Small Business Administration's COVID-19 Relief Funds for Small Businesses. So what are we talking about today, though? Today we're going to be focusing on the Paycheck Protection Program and the Healthcare Enhancement Act. That was the act that was signed on April 24th and allocated $484 billion. And essentially that was a follow-up on the CARES Act. So the CARES Act was signed into law on March 27th. And as many of you, I'm sure already know, there was the initial Paycheck Protection Program that lasted from April 3rd all the way till April 16th. So it didn't last very long. And we ran through $349 billion in 2 weeks. And so this is an additional $321 billion that's allocated to replenish the deleted PPP. As I'm sure you know, it's already open. We're into the second week here, and there was $175 billion spent or loaned in the first week. So we're going to be going through the eligibility requirements and the loan requirements, but we're just going to move through those more quickly. Under this act that went into law on the 24th, there's $60 billion allocated for small businesses through the SBA's EIDL program. That's Economic Injury Disaster Relief Loan Program. And that's one of the things we'll discuss towards the end. That's another option for people. All right, so the Paycheck Protection Program is a loan designed to provide a direct incentive for small businesses to keep their workers on the payroll. You can apply through any existing SBA lender, and we will email you the application form. Anyone who's on here today will email you the application form after today's presentation and an SBA lender list. So you can know all of the lenders and go look them up. The application requires you to submit expenses for the payroll for the past year. This is the thing that I would suggest asking your lender about if it applies to you. It's either the tax year 2019 or the past 12 months, whichever one's more advantageous to you. It's one of those areas where there's a lot of things going on with this that are not set in stone. It's just something I would ask about. I've seen that in a number of places. I don't see it in the act itself, but my understanding is from a number of sources that there's an option for either the 2019 tax year or the past 12 consecutive months. So please take advantage of that. I wanted to just create a separate, its own individual slide to say, if you've submitted an application for the first round of PPP funding, you need to reapply for the second round of funding. They're not going to carry that over. That's also, you hear varying reports about that, but and more power to your bank if they're carrying it over. If it were me, I would really suggest going there and applying again, because that's kind of the standard line. I don't want anyone to miss out, so we want to do a separate slide on that. Okay, how to qualify for loan forgiveness. The SBA will forgive loans if all of the employees are kept on the payroll for 8 weeks and it's used for a qualified purpose. You want to have at least 75% or more of the funds go towards payroll costs. I'm sure you guys are aware of that, and there are going to be some questions surrounding that. If you're under 75%, then that part's not going to be forgiven, okay? But if you can go ahead and estimate what they are now, which you should be able to do, and make sure the other costs are only 25%, then you're ahead of the game and you kind of keep things on track. Do this with your payroll provider. Make sure that you're all on the same page about what the 75-25 percentage is if you already have the loan or if you think it's forthcoming. We'll talk about paperwork in a couple of slides. And importantly, there's an 8-week period from when your loan is dispersed to you that you have to maintain all of the requirements, the 75-25 and all the other requirements we're going to discuss today. And after that 8-week period ends, you have 90 days to apply for loan forgiveness. I won't belabor it. I'm sure everyone's aware, but that's not automatic either. And you have 90 days to do so after the 8-week period. Okay, I think these are some really important parts here of the presentation. The only portions of the PPP loan that can be forgiven are qualified expenses, and they must be incurred during the 8-week period after the loan is issued, with an asterisk that it'll go to some of the points on the bottom that have to do with the covered period. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's focus now on the qualified expenses. You have payroll costs, which is a term of art, and they exclude individual employee compensation over $100,000. I think it's good to note that over 8 weeks, that's a maximum of $15,385 per individual. And the $100,000 salary exclusion only applies to cash, not to non-cash benefits. And that's a pretty extensive list of the non-cash benefits. Any of those things listed there, really, they're non-cash benefits that you can use above the $100,000 and still have those loans forgiven. Interest on mortgage obligations, rent, utility payments, interest on other debt. All of these things, it's all about the fact that there is, as it says, there's either a deal involved or it's incurred prior to the covered period. And the covered period with a capital C and a capital P means February 15th to June 30th. So there's your 8-week covered period, but there's the big covered period. And if it's anything that you've incurred after February 15th, just put an asterisk, a red flag, and try to check on that. Know that it's probably not going to be included. What can a PPP loan not be used for? It's just as useful. Of course, it can't be used for employee compensation over $100,000 a year. Federal taxes. State taxes are covered, federal taxes are not. Qualified sick leave, anything under the Family's First Coronavirus Response Act that a credit is allowed for is not going to be covered on loan forgiveness, so be careful about that. Compensation paid to an employee who resides outside of the US. I wouldn't say that's black and white, just flag that to follow up on. There's some specific rules around that. Mortgage obligation, as we talked about, if it's outside of the period, before the period, rather. Sorry, if it's after February 15th, it's not going to work. Interest on debt obligations that were incurred after the covered period. All right, I think we've got that. So, paperwork. I think the way I would put it is 2 slides ago, I would document all of that. That's really, in a nutshell, what you need to document, because within 90 days after the 8-week period's over, you're going to need to prove to the lender that the loan is forgivable and importantly, what percentage of the loans is forgivable. Lenders are great people. They provide a great service, but they've been given full authority, and it's very clear in the law. So they would love to have a little bit less be forgivable. And so anything on slide 9, document, and you're going to be okay. Now, there are also some specific things here that are listed that you should document specifically. So keep those in mind. Okay, so initially, the focus of this talk was going to be on the PPP, who's eligible, how to apply, how to have your loans forgiven. But as I'm sure you know, these things are moving quickly, and the funds are getting near depletion. And I thought that I would add some other options for you, some other information. Again, if you haven't applied yet, go apply now. Don't give up. There's a good chance that it could. There's been all sorts of technical glitches you may have read about. This thing could be slower. You should go ahead and apply. But if it doesn't work out for you, then there are some other options. And as noted in one of the first slides, the April 24th Act actually added another $60 billion to the EIDL program. While it's $60 billion isn't, it's just a fraction of $321 billion, it's also not being hit as hard. And these are really good loans too. There's a lot of money there. And you say, well, but either all or part of the PPP loan is forgivable, and the EIDL loans aren't. But there are some factors that may make you want to consider the EIDL loan too that we'll talk about in a few slides here. So it's a nice option to have. Don't be too worried if PPP is not working out for you. It's easy for me to say, but consider filing for bankruptcy. I've been practicing bankruptcy for quite a while, and there are great options. It's a program just as much as EIDL is in a lot of ways. The rules are set up. There are pros and cons to it, and it might be the right thing for your business. Then lastly, there's the Main Street Lending Program. These are kind of the big three alternatives to PPP, and that is coming out soon. Okay, so this is a little more about the EIDL program. Of those 3 bullet points from the last slide, this is the one I went into. If you are in Colorado or Washington or Texas and you're interested in advice on bankruptcy, please contact us. There are good options there. And I'll say the same about the EIDL program. One nice thing is if you just need some quick cash, it's only $10,000, but you don't have to pay it back. And they have to give it to you in 3 days. So if you apply for this, and even if they turn your loan down, your application down for the EIDL loan, they're still going to give you $10,000 in 3 days if everything goes right with their systems. But that's what they're supposed to do under the rules. Okay, so let's talk about the tax consequences of EIDL versus the PPP. The long and the short of it is that I think that, I imagine that a lot of people think that the PPP is definitely the way to go, but really, under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, there's a loan, or actually there's a tax write-off that eligible employers are permitted to claim equal to 50% of the wages paid to employees for any quarter in which they have either had to fully or partially suspend operation of business because of governmental orders due to COVID, or if they've had more than 50% decline in gross receipts as compared to the same quarter a year ago. So that's the conclusion of today's presentation, and I look forward to hearing your questions. Thank you.
That was awesome. Chauncey, would you like to maybe pop into the Q&A and maybe you can answer some of these that we have in here? I know you were answered a couple of them live, but I think that might be helpful.
Sure. Let's start. at the beginning. Do I know anyone who actually got PPP payout or loan yet? I do. I do know a few businesses that have. It doesn't really say where this person's from, but I don't know. From what I've read, the federal government's doing a decent job of keeping these loans under PPP appropriately proportioned or apportioned to the states. So there's been, well, just a couple of days ago, but there's been about $3 billion, for example, that have been loaned under this program in Colorado. And that proportion, I think it's like 1.7%, something like that, is roughly the proportion of Colorado citizens to the population of the United States. So, in other words, whatever state you're in, they should be doing a pretty good job of it. Is it hard to get? Yes. There's been a number of technical glitches, as I mentioned earlier. Just stick with it. You have those other options, and if it works out, great. If it doesn't, the EIDL loan is great. The Main Street loan, it seems a little more mixed reviews, but that's a great option too. And that one's going to be around for a long time. That's an extra $600 billion that the Federal Reserve has given out to lenders, and they're going to pay for 95% of it. So there are a lot of options. Yes, you do need to apply for a second time with the second round, for sure. And as I said earlier, some lenders may be on this, and they may call someone and they'll tell you no, you didn't have to. Anyone who tells you otherwise is wrong. I would just go ahead and apply again. There's enough. The thing you see a lot about this, and the reason you guys are even on this webinar is that there's a lot of differing information out there. I wouldn't say conflicting, but there's a lot. And the truth of the matter is the administration's making some of it up as they go along, and they're trying to help people out, and they're trying to make things user friendly. But you got to take care of yourself. Apply again for sure. Susan asks, can we reimburse our employees for loss of income? We reduce pay for April to go towards the 75% of loan towards payroll. Susan, yes, you can. And you can meet the 75% requirement by paying some of that money back. You can bring them back on, pay them more, as long as you meet 75% by the end of your 8-week period. That's the key. And the same is true of the requirement that wages not go down below 75%. There's a lot of 75%, but so not only can you not reduce your staff at all as far as numbers of employees, but you can't reduce your wages as well. So you can make that back up. And I just add the point too, to Susan's question, that you can also make up the employees that you have by the time that your 8-week period ends. I would be a little careful about that. You might want to do that sooner than later. But if you've let some people go and you're otherwise gonna not qualify for a lot of this, get them back on your payroll as soon as possible. Someone says, my understanding is that you can apply for and get both a PP loan and an EIDL. Yeah, you very well may be able to do that. But let's see, where did that go? But it's not going to be forgivable the same way. Okay, that EIDL loan is going to be held against your PPP loan and offset in certain ways. You still want to do the analysis of which one is better for your situation And that includes whether you're doing conjunction. But that's a great question. You can do it. It's just not. They're going to offset each other in certain ways. Wow. Someone says it looks like the EIDL loan is currently available only to agricultural businesses. Can you confirm this? Alana, I think that may be, even though it's a federal program, I think that that's probably state specific or at least kind of regional. I don't know that for sure. Yeah. So to answer your question, no, I can't confirm it. But I'm sorry if that's what's happening in your area. I mean, you've got to go with what's going on in your area. I just think it's something that everyone should at least entertain and look into wherever you are. Yeah, just to follow up on that last question and answer, HCX Lab says or asks, should we apply to both PPP and EIDL? I think so. Yes. I mean, it can't hurt. These are for short applications. Well, at least PPP is. So if you're going to do EIDL, you might as well throw PPP in there as well. I think EIDL is a little more onerous, so you might not go vice versa. But yeah, I would apply to both because there's so much demand, and their systems are getting hit hard. And if you're in that line, something could come through for you. And if you're not in one of them, then there's no chance.